Greetings. My name is Dr. Waddell Brooks, Sr., your host, and this is Community Forum. We're very fortunate this evening to have with us four exemplary people here, and we have a special guest all the way from Detroit, Michigan, Nia D. Terry. She's the author of The Hope Project, and this is what we're going to be talking about this evening. To my left is no stranger to Community Forum. She's my co-host, Ms. Tara Thomas. She is the Executive Director of North Shore Prep. And to her left is our special guest, Nia D. Terry. And to her left is the Executive Assistant to the, I'm sorry, Barry Zivan. Zivan. Okay, he's the Media Relations representative for Ms. Terry and executive producer. Now, to his left is the executive assistant to the CEO and president of the Zivan Corporation, Judith Ray Ross. Judith is not a stranger to Community Forum. She's been on here several times talking about the Holocaust and also Royalty of the Ring, a boxing program that she's instrumental in trying to bring to the city of North Chicago, Waukegan. Greetings, folks.
Hello. Good afternoon. Good evening.
We're very happy that all of you are taking time for your busy schedule, especially our guests who travel all the way from Detroit, Michigan to be with us. And this is a special occasion, so I invited two other people, Barry Zivan and also Judith Ray Ross, to cover us, and also co-hosts, also from Detroit, Michigan.
Absolutely.
Tara Thomas. Tara, we're very excited here. Detroit is a special place for you and so forth, so I know you would be interested in talking with our special guests. We want to start off with our special guest. We have a lot of dialogue that we're going to be using, but I want you to tell our listening audience just snippets, just a little bit about your personal and professional background.
Well, personally, I'm an award go-getter. I believe in doing the best I can, whatever I do in my life. Okay. So far, I've received 16 trophies in different areas, from modeling, runway modeling, video production, creative writing. Even when I was in college, my literature and professor said my writing was awesome. And I love to write. I started writing at 8 years old. And I decided to write the story we're going to talk about in a few minutes, called The Hope. After seeing so much out here in the world, I just said it was time for the black woman, to tell her story.
It's fantastic. Barry, we want to afford you the same opportunity to tell our listening audience a little bit about your personal and professional background.
Well, I was kind of born into the business. My second cousin was one of Edward R. Murrow's boys in London during World War II. Cecil Brown, he was ABC's first anchorman. My grandfather was agent for Milton Berle and George Burns and Gracie Allen. He was first violinist for the Pittsburgh Symphony. And so I started on radio in 1943 on KDKA in Pittsburgh, which is the world's first commercial radio station, and then as a boy singer. And then throughout my career, some of the highlights were that I was on Mr. Peepers with Wally Cox and Tony Randall for 2 years, which was an NBC series. Then I sang for 2 years with the Ray Charles Singers, the other Ray Charles, on the Perry Como show. And we were Perry's backup group. And been on television actually in news and weather capacity since 1957. Wow. And so it's been an interesting, and I've produced several documentaries. Sam Donaldson from ABC has hosted 4 of my documentaries and narrated them. And I've had the privilege to interview everybody from President Truman, for a half hour back in 1963, all the way to working for the Shah of Iran when he was still in power. Made documentaries for them to entice people to ski in Iran because he had created 4 major ski areas. That, of course, did not work out too well. But it's been a very eclectic life, and I've just finished writing my book. It's called Thank You, Jerry Stiller, for urging me to write this book. And Jerry's been a friend since the 1950s. His wife, Ann, passed away this past May. I'll be in New York this coming Tuesday for the memorial service. But it's been a very blessed life. And indeed, we should all count our blessings for everything that happens.
Judith, you're our anchor person, and I want to afford you the same opportunity, and we probably could do another show with you as well as with Barry, but just give a listening audience, just for those that may not have seen you before, just a little bit about your personal professional background.
Personal life, I'm a Chicagoan and a Skokian, born and bred. In addition to that, I spent 51 years teaching. I have a PhD in history, and I'm known as the great historical bum, because the historical thing about everything. I met Barry on a community action project. We became friends, and then at some point, Barry was kind enough to send me a contract, and I've been working with him ever since.
Fantastic. Tara, this is your opportunity before we get started. You're the Executive Director of North Shore Prep, but tell our listening audience a little bit about your background.
Well, I'm from Detroit.
Oh, okay.
I am a product of Detroit's Catholic schools.
Okay.
So I never had the privilege of going to a public school. And I graduated from Wayne State University, my undergraduate degree. I received my master's here in Illinois, Trinity, and I'm currently working on my PhD. So I'm like, oh, wow. I understand it's an elite club. I'm trying to hurry and become a member of that club. And my family's deep roots are there. And I was wondering, when you said you're from Detroit, well, one of my relatives started with a station where you worked as a voiceover, and that's Pat Harvey. But did you know Joe Caputo?
Yes.
Yeah, Joe Caputo, he interviewed me when I was a candidate. I went to, while in Detroit, I went to Dealer Academy School to be an automotive dealer. So when she said she was with the store, I wasn't sure she was an automotive dealer. I was in the Minority Academy, and Joe Caputo interviewed me. So I have a little contact with Channel 2, WJBK.
Right. And I went to Wayne State for psychology classes for about a year. So
Wayne State's a fabulous school. In fact, they're one of my schools, for my school, North Shore Prep and Great Lakes College Prep, and they've committed to give scholarships to our students if they meet the grade, and they will. So I still love Wayne State.
Well, one of our congressmen in Minnesota, Keith Ellison, is a graduate of Wayne State.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay, great school.
Well, our audience have not heard too much about me and my background, but so I just give just a little snippet there. I was born in the state of Mississippi, educated in East St. Louis, Illinois, where I became the first African-American student to graduate from East St. Louis public school system in 1950. So about 65 years ago, when the scholarship opportunity was $40 per semester. So that's been a little while ago. I've been a community activist really ever since I left East St. Louis High School because of the limited opportunities, there. Now, our guest, Naya Terry, you're author of The Hope, but tell us about, you say it's a book written to tribute to the black woman, the Afro-American woman, and now they use African-American woman, so we could talk about that too. And then the woman of color. Now, what piqued your interest to write a book about the black woman?
Well, history, Afro-American history. I had my first Afro-American history class at Post Junior High School in the 7th grade in Detroit. And I loved it so much that after we only get a half a semester. Back then you get 7B, 7A when I was in junior high school.
Okay.
So I had it in 7B. So when I got to the 7A, I had to take another class. So, but I didn't want to leave that class. So I would come back, right before class would start and sit outside his door just to hear a little bit more. And it piqued my interest because when I did get to have Afro-American history in school, I started listening. I started hearing things I've never heard before, and I was so amazed by all the journey of the black African man that I had to, I had to know more. So I started researching. So when I went, my grandmother, she passed away, and went to Baltimore, Maryland. I went to the African Museum in Baltimore, Maryland, and that's when I started collecting all my literature on Black history. That was about 1992. Then from 1992, I started researching. I started writing more, creating characters, creating songs, writing the music. And then it formed, then as I watched the news media, and I kept listening to stories of racism and experiencing racism myself, I said, it is time to tell her story. So with my Bible knowledge, because I'm Jehovah's Witness, we study the Bible a lot, I started comparing historical events with Bible prophecies. And I said, well, this was foretold. And that's how the monologue came along. It was foretold that these things would be. And she will stand in the midst of all these historic journeys. And that's how hope came to be.
Now, what's special about the black woman? You mentioned about the black man, and of course that's another three-story book.
We might want to rephrase what's special about the black woman. You sure you want to say that? I'm just saying. The people out there watching you.
Well, I have a wife and
daughter.
Who's she's married to a great man, but she's a greater woman.
Right.
So we might let that comment slide.
I do, right? No, but I want to know why she chose
the black woman.
the black woman.
Because there are many books and stories and historical events written on the male.
Okay. Okay.
And I decided that it's time for the woman to have her chance to say what she wants to say. Let her tell her story.
Okay.
Because when I was an insurance agent for 15 years, I went into a lot of homes. I met a lot of elderly people who would sit down and have tea or sandwiches or something. And they would tell me stories of olden days, of things that happened to them, personal experience of their families. And it just amazed me so. As well as with my grandmother telling me stories when I was in college. I had to write a lot of paperwork, create a lot of stories for literature. And I started to combine these stories and started researching more, and just with the Bible and the stories and the research, and I just couldn't stop myself. I was very impressed with the things I was learning. I was kind of insulted by the things I was seeing out here with our children shooting and killing each other. I said, they are so lost. They don't even know who they are or where they come from. So I said, it's time for them to know.
Well, your story, The Hope, is it folklore? Is it like when you said that you talked with your grandmother and other
Some
women?
of it is.
So it's all right. So because I was under the impression that some of this is based out of the Bible.
Exactly.
Okay. And then some of it is folklore.
Exactly.
Okay. All right.
Because the reason why I say that is because I could picture things that I would read about or research about and stories that I heard that they're telling me. Even though it's only bits and pieces, I could feel what they were saying. So I decided to make the story a little longer and create something around it. I gave them family, I gave them an era,
So can you give us a
timeline.
little bit, just a little snippet of what the story is about?
Okay, the story is about over 6,000 years of black history through the eyes of the black woman, which includes biblical prophecies and major historical events.
Like such as?
Such as Alexander the Great, you know, and coming up against Queen Candace of Ethiopia.
Okay.
How he refused to fight her because he didn't want to face shame and be humiliated if he lose the war to a black queen. So he turns around and goes to conquer Egypt instead. That was one story.
Okay. What about your god, or is it goddess of medicine?
And Malta. He was the goddess of medicine because he was the only man that did so much in surgeries and abdomen and skin maladies. He was the only person that could, if there's a time of war, he could go to both sides and help each wounded person and without being touched.
Because he was neutral.
He was neutral because he was very wise in his skill.
Okay.
And they didn't want to touch him. That's why they call him the god of medicine. You don't want to kill the god of medicine if he can help you.
You know what? I'm getting more excited about this as we go along, and I have a lot of questions, and you're the source, major source for the answers to my question. But I'd like to say just to my audience, you may go right now while we listen to the program to www.tactnovel.com. Again, that's www.tactnovel.com. And while you're watching the program, you can keep up to date, and you've had some questions that you can get in contact with Naya Terry in this manner. I'm interested in the black woman because the first God made man, right?
Yes, he did.
And of course, you mentioned that you're biblically, resource, right?
Right.
Then it wasn't until the problem came, I know I'm getting into trouble here, the problem came until the woman gave Adam the fruit and he did eat, right? And I realized that Adam said...
He had free will.
Exactly.
His own free will. He say, that woman you gave me,
Yes, he did.
So I guess this is still happening now.
Yes,
That,
yes, it is.
It's still happening now. Man is still blaming woman. The woman. But woman plays such a fantastic part.
The woman is very powerful. I mean, she bears the male child.
Okay.
She nurtures the male child.
Okay.
And brings him into manhood. Of course with his father's assistant, but nowadays there aren't many fathers in the home. So she has to play the role of mother and father. So she has a lot on her hand. Plus she has to be strong for her family as well as provide for her family.
Now I can agree with you on this. If I may say, my father left the home when I was 2 years old.
Okay.
And all I knew was my mother and my aunt until they passed. My mother passed at 90 years old, and my aunt was 91. And I was raised up women. Now, after I got married, I still had 2 girls and just 1 son, so the women still dominate. I don't regret it at all, because there is the vision, and I looked at all the things that the woman did, but I missed out on so much by not having the father.
Exactly.
But we're concentrating not on no man, but the woman. Now on your on the Bible, if we had African American history taught in high school, then we wouldn't have the problems, the challenges, the false information given out that we have now. But tell us about this black woman in the Bible. Give us a few examples. Now I know a few. We all know a few, like Deborah,
Deborah.
and we could name
Esther.
Queen Sheba. But all the women that are portrayed in the movies are Caucasian women.
Right.
And all these queens that were in Africa, they were dark-skinned. They were Africans, right?
Well, yes, they were African. They were black. They were from different tribes, but they were black. They were dark-skinned. They had woolly hair. Most of them had woolly hair, curly, woolly, what you want to call it, but they were brown-skinned. And if you read the Bible, when you start researching different, like the Hittites and the Canaanites in it, you start to research all these different tribes and kingdoms, you'll see that they were black. When the area where they come from, of Africa and Egypt, back then they were black.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's why I just feel it's time for her to stand.
Well, can we go back to your timeline, which is part of the Bible that Dr. Brooks so kindly mentioned, and we'll go up to, I guess, maybe around 800 BC now, where we're at the 7th daughter. Because in the Bible, we hear about the 7th son of the 7th son. But I know you've written an article on the 7th daughter. Now, that's a whole new perspective.
My grandmother told me a story about the 7th daughter when I was a young child. She said that the 7th daughter is the one that she has insight to see and to tell things of the future. She can tell things by looking at you. She could feel things from you. So, but you have to be the seventh daughter of a seventh daughter in order to have those, you know, traits. But I created 3 generations of the seventh daughter. Each seventh daughter, her powers, her insight increased.
Okay.
You know, it became more and more. So the last of the seventh daughter was Ekha. Now I created a story around her. And she was the one who was one of the king's favorite one to tell things, to see things, and how she was going against his general because he wanted her out the way so he can have that dominance, that prominence among the kingdom. So Hector knew it was coming. So she creates the ceremony of the woman. And then within this ceremonial dance, she calls and prays because she can see things in the fire, what's to come to Africa. So she tells of destruction and invasions, and all these things are going to be on an increase.
So she prophesies.
Exactly.
Okay.
And she spreads this knowledge to the young girls who dance among the fire. It's for them to take it into their knowledge into the world.
Okay. So then can we go up now to Alexander the Great?
Yes.
And how is a black woman involved with Alexander the Great?
As I said, Queen Candace of Ethiopia. Alexander was on a conquering rampage, as the Bible says. He was trying to conquer the world. And as he was, you know, encroaching on Africa, he wanted Ethiopia as well. But Candace knew he would come, but, you know, they had word that he was coming. Candace was very wise, and I mean, she was very heroic. She wasn't afraid to fight him or anybody else that came to invade her kingdom. So what she did, she lined her borders with her warriors.
Okay.
It was foretold amongst the stars and in the heavens that she would stand. Her back will be broken, although she will walk. Her weaknesses will be preyed upon. Her tribulations will be insufferable. Her strength will be remarkable. She will be a warrior. She will prevail. For over 3,000 years, she will continue to struggle. Her dreams will be preserved as she embraces her nightmares. For over 3,000 years, it was foretold that the distinction of her dark skin would be degraded, disrespected, and shamed. Her beauty unmatched, though by many denied.
And I've seen the promised land.
It was foretold that her incredible journey, her ability to love under the most critical circumstances, and her spiritual essence would encourage her existence. Yes, her footsteps, her blood, and her soul are deeply embedded within the earth. And yet, her destiny is imminent. For she is blessed. For she is black. For she is the hope.
So is that why it's titled The Hope? Because there was always hope for freedom, or hope for, what is hope? Hope for what? Or just
Hope is whatever you feel hope needs to be. I feel hope needs to be that I need to tell the story, to give hope to the young ones out here who don't know their history, to the people who haven't had a chance to read or to learn certain things. So that's why I put everything together in a chronological order to give you an idea of where the Africans.
I have to say
Sorry,
that
and what
I'm always amazed when I see African Americans with tattoos, okay, because of the branded. And we fought not to be branded. Although now I know with these young kids, it's fashion.
Yeah.
Okay?
Right.
But the whole, as I'm a historian as well, and I guess I raised my kids. They don't. Both of them, they're grown. They don't have tattoos because I indoctrinated in them what that meant. And I'm wondering, a lot of things we do, even with the kids wearing the pants hanging down, they don't realize, as you had said on many occasions, that symbolizes being a prisoner in prison, so why would you want to identify with that? And the tattoos, to me, were a symbol of branding, so I don't want them to identify with that. But we have grown, things change. I understand that. That's why when I saw that, I thought that's interesting, that shackles and branded.
Well, shackles or branded went further than that. In the Bible, it states that the carving of the body was not from God. It was based on rituals, so far as murders and death and everything. How many warriors you kill, you mark your face. You know, you drink their blood. You know, it was against God to mark and brand your skin because it shows that you were more for the demon that controlled the world, that walked the world.
You know, we just saw some dancing. How does this dance differ from the record dancing? What does that mean?
Well, back then, when they were dancing, they did basically the same kind of dance there now. You know, it wasn't too much different. It was always some kind of swaying of the hips or the shaking or the rolling of the eyes or the seduction of the hand, the touch or whatever. So it's basically the same thing, just created in different styles, but it's basically the same. It's seduction, dance of seductions.
You know what? I want to hear from Barry now. Barry, you the gee whiz, the media relations rep for Miss Cherry and executive producer, you know, the hope, you know. But tell us, how did you get involved?
Well, everything starts at a certain level.
Okay.
Years ago in Detroit, I met a man named Charles Costa. And Chuck was a philanthropist, and he helped a lot of people. And I helped him in public relations and media relations, etc. This is way back in the 1980s. And in my opinion, you never lose your Rolodex. You always keep your friends. And so literally only about 5 or 6 months ago, I got a call from one of Chuck's friends. And he said, this lady, Nia Terry, needs to be more recognized and more noticed, and because of what she's done. So he said, why don't you give Nia a call and see if you can try to help her in that regard, because that's part of what my business does. And so she kindly sent me the Hope, and I was immediately blown away by the depth of all she had written. This is no ordinary project, as you know. She wouldn't be here if you didn't feel that way as well.
Right, after I saw 335 pages with just one book, you know.
Right. But to have that kind of research and that chronology, I thought to myself, my goodness, this really does have to happen. And Lord willing, we are hoping to make a television miniseries of all of this, which in my opinion will be iconic.
Would that be on PBS or?
We don't know yet.
Okay.
Whoever will hopefully be, quote, smart enough to air it. Because these days especially we need quality in what our kids see especially, and even the adults. Everything, it's been a soundbite mentality for much too long, in my opinion, and to have this particular kind of series, and the books, of course, be such an incredible education, not only for African Americans, but for all races, because, let's face it, the Garden of Eden was in Africa, and you are the original people.
Now, with that, why isn't African American history taught in the schools? In other words, I should say African American history, but it's American history. or it's world history, really, because as you say, Ethiopia was the site of the. As a matter of fact, Naya, I think the oldest bones in the world has been found in an area called Ethiopia, and it was a black woman.
Yeah.
Her name, I guess, American name is Lucy.
Lucy.
You know, right? You heard the name before.
Yes.
And I don't have
Yes.
that real.
Yeah.
I got the
Her
real
name
name.
is,
I went
they've named
to
her
a
Lucy.
convention in Alexandria, Virginia, and Ethiopians, you know, worked at the hotel, and they gave me the real name, and that's been several years ago. I wrote it down, and I should have put it in my Rolodex or whatever to keep it there. But Lucy was the first woman
Yeah.
Yes.
in the world. Okay, I didn't mean to stop you, but that's how important the woman is in the world. You know.
That's something else, if I can jump in for a second. History, at least when the dinosaur and I went to school, was always about men.
Yes.
Men. Like they just suddenly appeared. Now I'm speaking as a mother and a grandmother, so it's not out of... But that's only part of the story. Whether or not the woman was dominant or was in the home or was society moved
Absolutely.
on the
Yes.
woman. Women actually make better legislators because, believe it or not, we know how to multitask
careful.
and compromise. So it's very important, Naya, as I see it, that you're telling a story that hasn't really been told before.
No, it hasn't. No.
Yeah. So,
Yeah. And it includes all women, but it's just through the eyes of the black woman.
Yeah, if I may, Dr. Brooks and I share something in common which we didn't know until a few minutes ago.
Okay.
My father left when I was 16 months old, and my mom raised me with my grandfather. And the mother, in my opinion, is the dominant force in everything that happens in this world. And as Naya said, they give birth to the children, to the men and the women. Boys and girls, and it has been overlooked, and it sounds so solicitous to say this, but it's really true. Women, we come as men. I don't know. I have, by the way, 2 daughters, 4 grandchildren, and 8 great-grandchildren.
Okay.
I've told my grandchildren to stop. I can't remember their names, but the real truth is, men. A lot of men won't admit it. But by golly, we're grateful, and should be to the female, because they are the mothers. They're the nurturers and the teachers.
Naya, have you ever heard the term, I don't know if it's a term, it's a cliche, that black women were free before women were free?
No, I haven't heard that.
Okay, well, then I was going to ask you to elaborate on that, but you may have heard it as an educator. But could you discuss the Negro Act for us then?
The Negro Act was an act to stop blacks from learning, stop them from roaming about, to stop them from doing anything, because the plantation owners were afraid that the blacks would congregate and cause more rebellions, which there were a lot of rebellions going on. Slaves did not want to be in slavery.
So we're up to like the 18th century now,
Right.
1740, okay.
Yeah, right. They still didn't want it. They were still being forced in it through Jim Crow and different laws that limit blacks from doing a lot of things. You know, even if they were trying to travel to another city or state, they were picked up for vagrancy and sent to prison. So it's still a form of slavery.
Okay. And so what was the Pritchett estate?
The Pritchett estate is a fiction story.
Okay.
It's based on some of the stories my grandmother told me. Our last name was Pritchett.
Okay.
And I used that name because of the spelling, because it was it's spelled the way it's spelled in the book. But during the time, they didn't know how to read or write too well, and the spelling changed. So I researched the spelling and came back with P-R-I-T-H-C-E-T-T-E instead of using P-R-I-D-G-E-T-T.
Okay.
You see what I'm saying?
I do.
So, because when they were doing the census, they even dropped the T after so long, you know, and changed the spelling. So now we spell P-R-I-D-G-E-T.
Okay.
You know, but they still pronouncing it Pritchett. You know, so I decided to tell the story about the Pritchett plantation, just creating a story of different women and what they were going through, from Nolly to Lily to Mammy Mae to Leela Ann to Verna, and then the plantation with Megan and Sylvia and Jed and all these different people, white and black, how they related to each other on the plantation. And the whippings and the runaway with Shumby and everybody, you know, it was just a lot of things going on. So I wanted to tell the different, create the characters, write it in character so you can get to know each one as you read.
So did they grow up on the plantation for generations?
Yes, some of them did. One of the girls, Patsy, even had about 12 children from Master. So during her last baby, she died in birth. But she was so busy worried about pleasing Master with another slave that the baby was breached. And she said, I just got to make sure Master don't beat me if it don't come out right. So she was basically in that area.
Okay. See, that's one thing we do live television. Anything can happen, right?
Exactly.
You know that.
Close to Halloween right
Yes,
now.
as you know.
There's a bell on the door to ring.
That's okay. So I beg your pardon. Go ahead.
So I tell about Patsy and how they kept her, she was in labor while she was steady doing work. She was working inside the house, and she went into labor, and they were trying to get her out the house, but the baby was coming fast. So she wound up falling to the kitchen floor, and that's when Megan comes in and said, "Get that out of here! Take her out to the back with the dogs. You can't have that in the kitchen." You know, so it was just how she was treated as if she was nothing, and where her mind was set at the time. She was basically trying to have another slave so she can feel, you know, satisfied Master's, you know.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because the slaves were the means of employment, you know, their property and their employees. So if that could come up, if we could journey on to Shame on You, Shame on Me.
Okay.
Okay.
Shame on you, shame on me. It's a lot. Shame on you, shame on me goes back into we're ending slavery, but we're still in slavery. And how the slaves are, how the people are changing, how we're getting more into the Civil War, the Ku Klux Klan, like shame on you, the Jim Crow, the way they had it set where after the Civil War ended, freed the slaves, and they posted the Emancipation Proclamation, 40 acres in the mule, how all that fits into shame on you, shame on me, because all those things weren't recognized even though after the Civil War, even though they tried to fight for it, but they were murdered, they were chased off their land. Just a lot of things started happening, and then the Ku Klux Klan was birthed, you know, to force them off the land and take back what was given to them.
So who is the shame on you, shame on me? Is it shame on you on the
anyone.
slave owner,
No.
or is it on the slave?
On the situations that they had to deal with, shame on you, shame on me, because all these many different situations, it was like shameful. How could you do that knowing the law says this, and you change the law and to have the law fit to what you needed it to be, to dominate another race?
I see.
We have history, and then we have African American history. but I don't know. I'm baffled after 50 years of studying history. You know, I'm baffled. Barry, is it a political reasons why we have, you know, people in slavery, or just what is it? Why is it just the fear of the black man, or it wasn't the fear of the black woman, I guess, the fear of the black man, I guess.
Do you mean how did it originate
slavery,
here,
how-
or why did it originate
Yeah,
here?
why do?
Power, greed, egos, very deranged thinking by those the Europeans who came over and said all of a sudden, oh, let's have this happen. I spent some time in Haiti, and I don't know if you've been to Cap Haitian, but there's a fortress built by a Frenchman named La Ferrière, and he was really the genesis of slavery in North America, because he had imported all these black people from Africa to build his big fortress. And I have some friends in Virginia who, and you're familiar with the story, who actually have wanted to get the, and Naya would definitely know this, that the original black people who came, who were used as slaves or brought to this continent as slaves, actually most of them started in Haiti because of La Ferrière. Then they moved up to Jamestown, Virginia, where it all started in the 1600s, and William Tucker was the first African-American baby born in North America. But anyway, it just, anything like that, but especially it's a horrible mark on human beings, human nature, especially the ones who are a quote dominant society. I've done quite a bit of work with the American Indians too, and it's a very similar thing. They had this entitlement, almost, they felt, to come and conquer, and that was it. And it was such an injustice, and people have to know that. They have to know that more.
Well, wouldn't you agree that it's free labor? And I agree with you that the original person was out of Haiti, but when they tried to inflict slavery on the Native Americans, if you will, they were able to rebel because they knew where to run and where to hide. So when you brought Africans over here, when they were not familiar with the territory, so they did not know how to escape, and they were easy pickings to be free labor. It could have been anyone, you know, the Irish. People are always talking about African Americans, and I don't disguise that, but the Irish came over and they were basically slaves. You know, they had to do indentured servitude, where they were able to work 7 years, but again, for free labor. And then after that, they were allowed to be free. But with the African Americans, you're on foreign land, foreign soil, you don't know anything, so where are you going to go? You don't know where to go. Whereas the Native Americans, they knew where to escape to. So trying to hold them down was almost going to be an impossibility.
There's something else, too. Those Africans that were brought in as slaves did not speak English.
Exactly.
And they had no way of communicating or finding out anything for a while there. And they didn't have the same nutrition.
Right.
Thinking of the hoe cake. The hoe cake in the plantation household is a pancake of some sort made with milk and eggs and sugar.
Exactly.
A hoe cake in the cabins, as the River Roads cookbook puts it, is basically flour and grease.
Yes.
Yeah, so that's an unhealthy diet. So they were very easy to secure them as slaves. But if we could move up through generations, I'm trying to follow her time scale, to the 1909, and I'm going to identify the National Association for the Advancement of Color People. Notice that color is of color people, to where we are with NAACP here today. And there's a chapter here in Lake County, which is where you are right now. And Dr. Brooks used to be a former president of that chapter. We're having an event coming up next month. So could we go to the history of the National Association?
Well, it started with the National Association of the Colored Women. They formed an organization to stop the degrading of the black woman. They were white and black members, and they were marching, and they were trying to get this organization going to stop the lynching and the disgrace of the black woman and the black race, the Negro, and what they called them then.
So the NAACP is founded primarily for the lynching that was brought people of color and non-color together.
That came after the National Association of Colored Men. That came second. And then the NAACP came last. But after that.
Did they drop it and merge?
Yeah, they merged. The Women's Association of Colored Women is still there. But they all was fighting for the same reason, the same thing. Freedom, equality, jobs, you know, to stop the lynching, basically. They were picking us because the lynching, they were having lynching parties at that time. Right, and you just know where you can go. You'll be picked up, kidnapped, either raped or lynched.
I know we're talking about the black woman, but are you aware that the NAACP was formed initially by a white female?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
So there's a woman again, it's not necessarily this black woman, the white woman. I think she read it on the Independent was the newspaper in Illinois. She read about the lynching in Springfield, Illinois.
Right, yeah.
And she got together a group. mixed group, interracial group.
Right.
I think Niagara in 1908 when they first met, but they officially formed in 1909.
Right.
You know,
Exactly.
so we have to credit the white female to you.
Oh, yeah,
But tell us
they were
about
mixed
this
races.
beautiful black woman, though. Let's go back to go back to biblical. And all those beautiful women, let's talk about, Esther, was she the most beautiful woman in the world?
They say yes.
And she just happened to be black, right?
Yes, you have to do that. As well as Queen Thais, she was supposed to be the most beautiful woman. All of them saying the black were very beautiful women. And they were saying, it depended on who you're looking at. Because if you, when I look at even black women today, well, I see how the beauty inside of them. You know, so it depends on how you look at it. I'll determine beautiful. You know.
But now, when we're looking at the black women back then, and it encompasses Africa and Egypt, which is part of Africa.
Right.
Okay.
People forget that.
Right.
Africa is a continent, it's not a country, okay?
Right.
So, which is interesting in itself. So when we look at that, women who are black, they were of all pigmentations, just like we are today,
Exactly.
as we all sit here at this table. And the women of the Middle East, which was part of then considered the part of the continent of Africa. So that skin pigmentation, it varies, and it has continued to vary to this day.
Well, back then there was a lot of wars. The Syrians, through Nimrod, were conquering different African kingdoms and kingdoms, you know, all over that continent. And if you did not convert to Islam with the Syrians, you were murdered. A lot of African queens and villages, they took poison to kill themselves because they refused to convert.
To convert to that religion.
Exactly.
Which is interesting because that's what ISIS is doing today.
Exactly.
The same type of mentality is being exercised today,
Exactly.
thousands of years later.
In the city of Nineveh back in 680 BC, 632 BC. So around that time when Nimrod was forming his cities and building the Tower of Babel, they were chopping off heads and things back then because
Still today.
that's how they show their power and their strength. By the more heads you collected, the more powerful you were, and you were rewarded by your king for that. So all this, so far as the suicide bombers, and they're still doing the same thing.
The
they
more
did
things change, the
at
more
back.
they remain the same.
Exactly.
That's very interesting.
So we can say the Hope, as you mentioned, is an educational journey, and it's recommended for ages, you think 15 to adult.
Right.
Well,
The reason why I say 15 is because some of the things, even though they're pleasantly told, they can be graphic because I write about this 10-year-old girl, Shaw, who's on the McGregor plantation, and how she's taken into the hut. That's the hut where they mate by the master's son.
Okay.
You know, and how her mother, Letha Ann, begs her father, because he's friends with the taskmaster, don't let him take Shaw. She's the youngest, you know, he's ever taken in there. Please stop him. And what he does, he pushes her to the ground and spits at her and tells her that she belongs to master like you belong to master. And he carries his 10-year-old daughter off into the shack while her doll lays on the ground and near the muddy water.
Barry, could you tell me, are you having difficulty? This story, as Naya just said, just some of the things you said, they're very graphic.
That's what
I'm sitting next to you. Oh, yes, I understand that, because maybe beyond my age even. Because as I sit next to you and I hear it, and I cringe. You know, as an African American woman, I cringe, and I've had a lot of death in our family back in the 1800s as well. But are you having a difficulty getting this produced, getting it made, or selling it? Because I know, for example, Oprah Winfrey just said today on the news, she's on the news, about this new project she's in, which would be perfect for this. It was on CBS today. And she announced this new project of a new network she's having to do documentaries. Now, I don't know if this is being projected as a documentary. It seems like it could fall in that context. But are you having a problem selling the package? Or are people, are you going to have to cut some of it out? It's going to be graphic, but that's life. And what Naya said is true. It's true life. It happened.
Yeah. Well, in my opinion, first of all, with cable today, you can express anything.
Yes.
As long as it's not on the air network like ABC, CBS, NBC, or Fox. but we're just in the process of beginning to pitch it.
I see.
And so Oprah's name has been mentioned. Thank you for the
Brand new networks just
for
starting.
the tip, because we'll certainly pursue that. The sad part today, especially for any series, is getting the people who make the decisions to say yes. You either have to come in with a sponsor or have it fully funded by some group or some to make it happen. Things have changed. The dynamics, as you know, have changed so much in the broadcast industry, and it's just it's so fractionated now that it isn't as it used to be when it was easy, almost easy for an epic like this. And I'm not just saying it
and
because
this would be an epic.
Oh,
absolutely.
It would be one of the most special series that was ever created. This would eclipse Roots.
Well, you know, Roots 2, not Roots 2, but the
Remake.
They're making a remake right now for Roots.
Right.
So I'm thinking her timing is very, very appropriate. It should be not an easy sell, but a doable sell on this, I would think.
Yeah, well, we'll definitely want to pursue it, and we need all the help we can get. So,
put that out
whatever.
there.
Yes, it's really interesting. One of my high school mates in New York was Leslie Uggams, and Leslie's one of my best friends still. And she of course was on Roots, and one of the projects that we were going to do several years ago about William Tucker, she agreed to reprise her role as an older woman in Roots, but so who knows? In other words, I would definitely tap Leslie to be one of your stars.
Great.
She's a wonderful girl. Wonderful.
This
girl.
would be perfect for Oprah. But as we move up
Thank
and you see the Tuskegee Airmen, I'm biased because my husband's a pilot. So this is always, and I think the Tuskegee Airmen that was done was just fabulous. But were there any women involved other than Eleanor Roosevelt, who was phenomenal?
Bessie Coleman. She was one of the first black female pilots.
Really?
Yes, but she couldn't get her pilot's license here in America.
Right.
She had to go to
France.
France to
Exactly.
get that. But she came back. She was an excellent pilot. She was killed accidentally when her engine stopped when she was on an air show as the Tuskegee Airmen watched at a fair. Yeah.
Now that's very pertinent,
And
very interesting.
Bessie Coleman's name is over the overpass at O'Hare Field.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's a
And she was
tribute to
on
her.
a stamp. She was one of the
Oh,
first.
she was
I
on
think
the
she was
stamp
the
too.
first black woman to be on a stamp. if I'm
Yeah,
not
so the
mistaken.
hope gives you hope. It gives you history. It gives you a reason to understand things that are going on in your life then and that's going on in your life now. And you can balance it up and find yourself and to improve your life. That's what the hope is about, giving you hope, especially our young people. That's the main reason why I wrote it. So I just felt so lost for them.
Now, you've been thinking about this since you were 8 years old, right? I understand that you began at the age of 8 by writing your first book, right?
I started writing at 8, and I continued to write. And by the time I graduated high school, my locker was full of writings, the top of the locker. I mean, they were so packed in there. I had poems, songs, short stories, everything in that locker that I threw them away because I was afraid to bring them home because my father was against me writing.
Cooley was integrated when you went there,
Yes.
wasn't it? It
Well,
wasn't all
the
black.
first year
Okay.
it was.
Okay.
It was like maybe 1/3 and 2/3 blacks when I went there.
Okay.
Well, we're going to have to continue this on another segment. This segment is ended so quickly that, Tara, I want to thank you again for your resourcefulness and
Always a pleasure.
history major, and you're
Love
very fit right in here. And talking with being a co-host again, you know, we're going to promote you one of these days.
Yes, pleasure.
Being an outstanding woman.
Oh, bless you. Thank you so much. But it's wonderful to be able to speak to people from Detroit.
Yeah, from your hometown.
Yes, I am so blessed and thrilled.
Yeah, I'm
Trust
really
me.
surprised.
Barry, Detroit as well.
You know, Just found out you from Detroit too.
Well, I worked there for 6.5 years. And
Okay,
I loved
okay.
it. I loved it.
And also, Judith Ray Ross, great having you back again.
Well,
And
it's good to be back.
you have a key to the forum.
Thank you so much.
Ladies and gentlemen, we've been talking again with a special guest, Mrs. Naya D. Terry, author of The Hope. And you can go now to www.tactnovel.com and get further information, and probably purchased 2 of her books already, and she got one that's probably end of the year it will be ready. Knowledge is power, and she's been sharing with us the knowledge, writing a book, a tribute to black woman, the African American woman, and the woman of color, and it's an educational journey that's recommended for ages 15 to adult. This has been Community Forum. My name is Dr. Waddell Brooks Sr., your host.